Hey, muy buenas noches, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well, blessed, and enjoying family. As always, do please allow me to start off by thanking everyone for everyone's words, wishes, prayers, the time and love and support you guys extend my way. From the heart, I appreciate every one of you. Also, do please like, share, and subscribe, or even hit thumbs down just to help the message get out there a little bit better. Gracias. Well, before getting into the story on him, I do want to say something, right? I've was hearing somebody, and I want to make something clear, right? Because he made made a lot of sense, right? That in reality, the message is a message, and I will stay on it, because that's all I know. With this said, in no way, shape, or form am I trying to make prison look cool or glorify where I've been. I was an idiot. The whole point of the message is, you know, be about you, family, make something. Don't go into these lies. Don't go into this, a bunch of time you're going to be sitting down listening to somebody, whether it be through the program or the Hudas, right? And throughout it all, go through heartaches of what's not there, right? But, anyways, I just thought I started off like that, right? I don't want to distract or go off course of what the message is about and why I'm here. Well, today I want to touch on a curious question, right? That I've been asked, which is, is there camaradas, sureños, southsiders that abuse their power? And, I want to put this out there because, at the end of the day, this individual hurt quite a few people, right? And we go back to basically a member, Pili, that at least in my times, right, we were all slammed. So they give power, but they never backtrack or double check their workers' actions. All that is required is that monthly feed, right, coming in and them holding down the jardín for them. But throughout, throughout it all, excuse me, there is those individuals that power becomes their addiction, you know. For example, in my times, it was the llavero system, right? One individual controlled everything, controlled the jardín. He established his mesa, you know, and he loved dope. So we go into that, whoever hits, at least from our faction, was going to bless the Pili with the third. Nevertheless, from that third, it would depends how he was squared off with his Pili, right? He would still get high for free. In the sense of doing so, you know, I'm not gonna say they ain't individuals that could use dope and at the same time hold a program, because I seen it, right, where they don't lose their mind, but then again they had it to not lose their mind, right? But there is those that they allowed it to control it, period, point blank. And that's the case that this story is gonna circle around. I wanna talk tonight about Joker from Bratz, And the Chente from East Los, the Billy, it was well respected, calm. I never heard no negative for him in politics like that. He just wanted his little piece of the pie, right? At least in my case, right? That's how I viewed it. Nevertheless, you know, we're gonna circle around the lower levels on this one, right? For example, Joker, he went out to the yard. It was a level two out there in Soledad, excuse me. And Chenta's a perfect example, right? That you have these individuals come on here and they talk about robbing neighbors with this, with that, and it's not true, right? Some cats get lucky, they tap into that need, at least when everybody was slammed, right? Of Billy's wanting a little bit of power, making a little bit of feria. Homeboy at his time did his 10-month shoot turn you know, for a piece or something. And when he did so, he just happened to cross paths with Chente, and it was just boom, 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 boom. Who's holding the jardín there? This, and that. They stayed in touch, you know. It wasn't nothing like he had the proper clecha, how to do things, how he wanted things. It wasn't even meant like that. Anyways, homeboy, you would, you shoot, you go to a 180 automatically. So in the time, I guess homeboy Joker parole, right? But he stayed showing love to Chente in feria wise, right? So he would come back for a small case with a new number, and he would go to Soledad. Going through Soledad, he was checking in with Chente, right? Level 2 again, nobody had the yard, so he would eventually take control of the yard, you know, and doing so, like I stated in the beginning, he saw that he could get high for free. And when we speak about Joker, right, and it's why I'm touching on him, is because he minimized other camaradas. He was that level 15, 12, whatever you want to call it, that he was this, and that, when in reality he sat down to pee, right? He didn't even know what he was talking about, point blank. You know, when things circle around, this vato didn't really know even how to set up a proper yard crew, right? But the one thing he did set up was, if you get dope, whatever, you're gonna break bread, right? So again, Chente was happy, and throughout this whole time, I'm not gonna mention the two homies' names, but how Joker's name went up, right, to the Bay, was behind two camaradas that basically got disrespected by another race, to the point where there was physical disrespect, if you guys get it, over two individuals being drunk from a different race. So it's an automatic reaction from us, right? Remember, one of our things is our people is untouchable. So again, being a level 2 in this fool not having any type of clecha, he said chales. He had a shipment of dope coming in this weekend. And At this time, something happened like that. They slammed the yard for a while, right? They were buried, but anyways, I guess the homies weren't happy with it, right? We go back to when you're in when you walk in the yard, all that comadre stuff. If it's let go, it's let go point blank. You're not to speak on it. But the homies were circling around that. You know, there's certain battles in prison that tend to be around you, acting like, hey, I'm your camarada, this, and that. At the same time, they're lambe huevos. You know, they go kiss up to the fool that has a yard. And they start speaking. Me personally, I hated vatos that came up to me and started whining and crying. Because it's a form of snitching, right? If something to the extent where, okay, here's a little piece, go handle your business. I'll give you the respects of you feeling so strong about it. Go buck up and handle it. Unless it had to do with the upper ups. Then, anyways, Joker would end up watching these individuals, these camaradas, and over BS. At the end of the day, he shot that appeal to Chente, and Chente did not even read it, in my belief, right? Knowing how he was, it's weird that he approved it. He gave his go ahead, handle it, do it, deal with them individuals. So the homies got hit, right? At the end of the day, it circles back to dope and money. Joker was sending that money, right? I never been at level two, but I could guess that level two's it's a lot more of a money maker than a 180, right? Level four, where I did my time, and Feria blinds, power blinds, and anyways, this got back right to Pelican Bay to a few peelies, but the one that it really hit was Babo and Tablas. When it comes to homies from Bratz, it falls under their area, right? Their circle of power. So they start investigating it. But as everyone knows, level two, you're short timing. Joker will end up going home. And as this individual's home, you know, he was he got put out like that, right? That he was to get hit. But it falls into what a lot of people don't talk about, right? Even in GP, there's people that skate by. They're undercover. That for one reason or another, you got this Billy right here pushing against you. At the same time, the individual that has the target mark on him is corresponding still with the Billy that's giving him okay. So as a camarada, it puts you in the situation of you don't want to get involved. You you take care of the individual. You run the risk of Chente putting you on the green light, right? Because you're taking from his pocket. And then if you don't take care of it and you're in reach of this individual, it circles back to tablas and bobble, and you're gonna definitely get hit. because you're aware that he's on the lista. What they're not speaking on though, you see, pilis, they're carnales, right? Per se, but they don't speak to each other. They don't lay their hand to the next pili on what they're doing, who they're in touch. So anyways, homeboy would end up coming back, right? He would go to high desert. I don't know the case he came back on. And high desert is just one of them pintas where you had Sherm, you had Psycho, you had Terco. Different. It's way different than running a level two, right? Nevertheless, homeboy got there. He got the appeal that he was to be given a position by Chente, for Chente, and he started doing his thing, right? In the sense of minimizing camaradas, and that's one thing that I came to learn. When it comes to doing time, camaradas are to be utmost respected in a 180. It don't matter which camarada it is. People ask me to speak about wrestling. There's nothing to speak about. He runs with us. He's a camarada. Period. Point blank. Everybody's gonna show you love. You don't minimize a camarada. You know. And anyways, by doing so, he started bumping heads with Psycho Soldado. The funny thing is, Psycho Soldado was Joker's own homeboy. Old man Mousy from Bratz, right? I never met the homie, but just through Willas, cause again Terco was on the yard and I was helping Terco, and being homeboys, his own homeboy started. He didn't want what he was doing, right? He was bringing poison to the Ranfla, so he started pressing the issue with Psycho. As everybody in a 180, well, I'm not gonna say everybody, mostly every camarada in a 180 is in touch with somebody. Remember, it's the shoe era. If you're not a lifer, mostly you're gonna be in a 180 for going to the shoe. So, anyways, one day on the yard, basically Richie told him, "Go ahead, do what you gotta do. I'll back you up with my hermano Chente." So, Mousy was prepared. He went in the block, got his pedazo, and he went out to yard and confronted Joker. Remember, this was an individual that was taking down camaradas for no reason, minimizing them. He was this big old rider, right? Sureño by his own mouth. And when Mousy ran up on him and basically called him out, homeboy at that spot was one of them pancheros, right? Que you don't know, all them type, them woofers, right? And said Simon, but he went in the block to get his pedazo, right? Which he shouldn't have even gotten that give, right? It just goes to the lack of communication the Pilis have amongst each other. Tablas Babo had not requested or put out there with the rest of the Pilis that they had put this individual on the lista. Chente wasn't telling other Pilis, "This is my worker. He's good, right?" Again, he would just sign off on the mama Pilis. And anyways, homeboy went in the block to get his piece. He got escorted to the program office by Judas. He locked it up. The one thing that this bicho did is he heard a lot of vatos from his neighborhood. You see, homeboy had never done nothing, never been nowhere, never met nobody. So all he had was to give his own neighborhood up. So it goes to show, how individuals, you can know from your neighborhood, but you gotta stay on your toes, be smart. They can run a good one. A lot of people can say I'm the stupidest when I speak, I'm calm, but I think about what I speak. And what I speak of, it's already in writing, been out there, and you know, I try to be careful, and I try to do it for camaradas. Believe me. At the end of the day, I never bent my arm back and acted like a tururu. I completed my mission. Everybody knows the reason why, right? But anyways, what I'm trying to say is we circle back around to what I say, be smart. When you see a vato get out with a good mouthpiece, the whole purpose of the message I'm putting out is for you to have enough clecha, schooling, knowledge. By the time he goes and tries to get in your head, you're already gone, came back, gone, and came back again. And basically, brain picked him. And you can put that shield like, alright, homie, boom, check his bicep and keep him away from you. Don't allow him to poison your head with all this. You go in and it's all honey, sugar. It's what you have to do now. If you go, buck up, do what you gotta do, right? Don't ever go sideways. And I say that with the utmost respect. There's sometimes you can't avoid it. Dirty politicking, pencil whooping, even a llavero on the yard does something and he's aware that somebody has to be knocked down and they'll throw camaradas under the bus, specifically the closest ones to them. So, again, there's nothing in prison. I speak to put the message in the awareness. But what I want people to see the most is what I did, how I'm turning out, and for what. There's nothing to be proud of. 20 years slammed, straight, federal prison, state prison in Mexico, the tortures, the things on the streets we did. And for $3,500, just because I was in a position of, in their head, not to know, they took out one of my closest, dearest family members I trusted them with. I stepped back. But that's exactly what I did. I stepped back. Again, if you're there, love your neighborhood, love the cause. But overall, stay true to yourself and loyal to loved ones.